tough.
So welcome. Today we've got a special guest, Jack Farley Stewart, who was with me at Strikefatron 204, and he will be joining us today. Hello, Farley. How are you doing? How's everything? Thank you for coming on the channel. I know you're a busy man, but I appreciate you being here. How are you?
Thanks, Mover. I am doing good. How are you?
Farley, man, dude, you've been busy. You're still flying Hornets, right? You're still actually flying?
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough actually to still be flying down with the guys in New Orleans.
Wow. Well, so let's get started. But first off, thank you for agreeing to do this. You know, you are the one of many. I think our third VFA 204 guy. You flew with both special and oral, so a lot of common good there. But we're going to talk about your story and how you became a fighter pilot. And you were the first, I think, to actually go to the academy. So tell me, how'd you get the bug? What got you into aviation? And how did you get into the Annapolis, the Naval Academy?
Well, the aviation bug, I think everyone gets it the same way. You know, there's just that one first seeing an airplane flying at an airport or hopping into this little airplane or going for your first airplane ride. And once you got that, you're kind of set. So for me, my dad was a pilot. He was a private pilot, flew from a real young age. And so, aviation was just in my family. So, part of my growing up was going to the air show every summer and spending, from sun up to sundown, looking at every single airplane we could see. So that's how I got the aviation bug.
Dude, that's awesome.
But going to the Naval Academy was a different story. That was something that, I wanted to do since I was about 8 years old. I just read about it in Boys Life magazine and said, I want to go there. And my parents were like, you're crazy, man. I don't know why you want to do that. But I made the decision. That's what I was going to do.
Did you have your license before? So since your dad was a private pilot, did you get your license prior to applying?
No, they offered to give me lessons while I was still in high school, but being a high school kid, I was stupid, so I turned that down. Just rather hang out with my friends, I guess. But no, I got my license basically the summer after my freshman year. I came home and spent 30 days in some of the nicest weather in Seattle and flew every single day and got my license.
Wow. So what's the application process like? Did you have to have a 4.0? Were you, were really good in high school, or how does that work to get in?
Well, I'll tell you, I tell my kids now that if I were applying today, I probably wouldn't have made it in. Things were a little bit easier back in the day, I guess, because no, I wasn't a 4.0 student. I had good grades, mostly A's and B's. Varsity athlete, honor society, Eagle Scout. I tried to get as well-rounded as I could. But yeah, the application process is pretty detailed. There's two prongs. The one prong is the congressional aspect of it, where you need to get a congressman, senator, vice president to nominate you. And then once you do that, then you have to apply to the academy, and then they have to accept you based on your academic record.
Wow. So was that tough? Did you have connections, or was it just cold calling until one of them said yes?
Yeah, no connections whatsoever. But every congressional staff has, they have an office that's strictly set up for, academy nominations. So once you get that number, you just call them constantly until you figure out what the process is, and then start writing letters, filling out applications, and then they usually call you in and you interview with a panel of usually like 3 or 4 academy graduates who know what it takes. And, they ask you questions that, you're supposed to have a really good answer for. And, apparently I did, because they accepted me and gave me the nomination. So,
dude, that's awesome. So it's a 4-year program. Tell me about academy life. How was that for you?
Academy life.
Was it a culture shock?
Yeah. So a kid who grew up in Seattle during the 90s, with Pearl Jam and Nirvana and the whole grunge scene.
Dude, did you have one of those wallets with the chain? Did you have a chain?
Not till I got to the academy. I had that at the academy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I had flannel though. I wore a lot of flannel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course, of course. Yeah. So, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty tough the first year, right? I mean, that's really where you
Yeah. I
sink or
wanted to
swim.
quit, I think, every single day. I mean, every day I woke up and said, I want to go home. But fortunately, my parents wouldn't have me. They wouldn't bring me back home. So I had nowhere else to go. So I stuck it out.
I've got nowhere else to be. So, I mean, did you know I want to be a fighter pilot there? Is that kind of the whole goal was to be a naval aviator, or were you open to other things? Like how does the selection process and stuff work?
Yeah. So, I mean, I wanted to be a fighter pilot from a really young age, obviously, with, my dad being a pilot, my grandpa flew B-17s in World War II. So,
Dude, awesome.
I knew that's what I wanted to do. But then somewhere along the line in high school, I think when Charlie Sheen's movie Navy SEALs came out, it said, hey, I want to be a Navy SEAL.
Oh
So I was
wow.
a swimmer, in high school, and I thought, hey, this is what I want to do. So I go to the Naval Academy thinking I'm going to be a SEAL. And then I realized I didn't like waking up early. I didn't like being cold. I didn't like being, wet. So, yeah, I just kind of said, okay, back to square one. Let's go back to being a pilot. So,
Well, then Hot
yeah,
Shots came out, right? So Hot Shots came out.
right.
Charlie
And
Sheen made another movie, and that was
back in the thick of it. Yeah. So, but the selection process is a little different. You don't choose until basically your third year, the beginning of your fourth year is kind of when you select it. Everything up to that point, you kind of get a well-rounded experience. You get to see what it's like being a Marine. You get to see what it's like, submarine, surface, and you kind of all aspects.
so you go out there and
And
like the summertime, you go do all this stuff.
yeah, you do. Usually, your first summer you spend on well, not your first summer, but the summer after your first year, you spend on a Navy ship. Get to see what it's like as an enlisted sailor on a Navy ship.
Oh, cool.
Fortunately for me, mine was an amphibious assault ship out of San Diego, and I was assigned to a sailor who immediately left to go to some school, but no one knew he left, so I was kind of on my own. So I spent a lot of time in Tijuana before Tijuana was dangerous, and at the beach. So it really was not a bad deal for me. But then, yeah, then the next summer you kind of get a chance to branch out a little bit more and kind of see what else is out there. And so that's where I was looking at being a Marine. So I went down to Quantico and got a chance to experience what it was like being a Marine. Spent a couple of weeks down with basically where the basic school is, where the infantry officer course is, and then I spent a couple of weeks down in Camp Lejeune and New River so I was with a recon unit at Camp Lejeune, and then a Huey and Cobra squadron at New River. So got a little taste of that. Really enjoyed my time with the Marines, but again, I didn't want to be cold or wet or dirty, so back to square one, being a Navy pilot.
Did you get to fly at all with the Cobras or any of that stuff
Yeah,
while you were
yeah,
down
we got
there?
rides with them. Yeah, it
Really?
was awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. Do
yeah, we
do
got to ride
Marines?
in the back of the Huey, and what's that?
I said, do Marines go to Annapolis? Is it so you were with Marines during that time as well?
Yeah, so we have prior enlisted Marines that go through Annapolis, and then also normal, kids that come in from high school like me. I think it's about a third of them could select Marine Corps,
Really?
and I know our class had one of the biggest classes of people that wanted to go Marine Corps.
So that was an option after if you'd have loved
Yeah,
the Cobra, you could have been like, "Hey, I want to go be a Marine now."
yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I see. I didn't know that about the academy. So, when do you actually get your job and figure out and rack and stack your assignments?
Yeah, so basically, it's after that summer of your junior year. So going into your senior year, that's kind of when you say, okay, you've got all your grades kind of lined up, and that's when they have service assignment. So you basically put in your first choice all the way down through all of them, and then they have a service assignment night, and that's where they basically tell everybody, hey, you're going to go Navy pilot, you're going Marine pilot, you're going Marine infantry, whatever. They tell everyone all at the same time. And then the surface guys, the guys get assigned to ships. They get actually pick their ships and their home ports
Oh,
that night
wow.
too. So yeah, it's pretty cool for them. Most the pilots, they just get to pick what date they're going down to Pensacola to start flying.
Yeah. And you got that, and were you pretty excited to go? I'm going to go be a pilot now.
Oh man, it was great. Being an English major, finishing in the solid third of my class, it was awesome.
So
Knowing I was going to be down in Pensacola.
and that was my next question is what you majored in. So English major, which is why Farley is going to become a prolific author. What do you have? 3 books now you've written that you're working on?
Written 3 books, written 3, just looking for a home.
Yeah.
So that's the
Well,
hard, as you know, that's the hard
we'll
process.
talk more about the books here later, but
Hmm.
so you go down to Pensacola, and that's primary or API, right? So
Right.
I mean, how was that for an English major?
Well, again, I had a pilot background, right? I had my
Yeah.
license already. I was on the flying team at the Naval Academy, so I did fly out to nationals and fly into Kansas with the team and
What's the
competed.
flying
So
team?
there's an international, there's a national collegiate association. They call it SafeCon. It's all the schools that have, flying programs, Air Force Academy, Naval Academy, obviously, but Embry-Riddle, North Dakota, those places, they have all have teams and they go and compete in different events. One of the events is like a recce where they'll flash a picture of an airplane up on a screen and you have to say what it is.
Really?
And most of us on the team, like we knew the military ones pretty good, but the civilian ones were like, it's a Cessna.
I'd be
No,
terrible
no,
at this
okay.
game. Yeah,
Yeah,
Airbus, Boeing, they all look the
right,
same. Yeah, I don't
right,
know.
right. Yeah, we quizzed on FARs, but some of the flying ones were pretty fun. They had like it's basically like a land navigation, but in the air, so they tell you to fly a certain bearing and distance, and then turn to another bearing and distance, and you have to basically mark where you are on the map as you go, and then come back
Wow.
and they grade you on something, or
What kind of
there's a
airplane?
bomb drop. Uh, so each school had their own planes. We flew used Air Force Academy T-41 Muscaleros, the Cessna 172. It's a
Yeah.
high altitude prop. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, we still had the Air Force paint scheme on the side of the plane and everything.
Couldn't even repaint the thing. Oh, that's
No, we
too
were
bad.
poor, man. We're the Navy, we just kind of beg, borrow, and steal.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I spent some time in the Navy. I learned that. But what was the? You said there was a bomb dropping competition. Would you just open the door and hope it doesn't yaw while you're trying to throw the window, I
Well,
guess.
typically it's just the window. Yeah, you just crack the window open and you hold out a sandbag and okay, let go and try to get it in a 50-gallon drum. And we were actually pretty good at that one.
Yeah. Well, awesome. So
Yeah.
you obviously then showed up with flight time. So what was it like?
Yeah.
You flew the T-34.
Yeah. So API obviously is just ground school. So my time in Pensacola was just classroom work. And then from there, you could either go to Whiting Field, which is in the Pensacola area, or Corpus Christi. So I went to Corpus Christi. So only spent a couple months in Pensacola before moving to Texas. Flew the T-34C Turbo Mentor, single engine prop plane. I'd say the first few flights were pretty easy, because they're
Hmm.
just teaching you how to talk on the radio, what the controls do. And I got that, okay, I got a license. I know what that does. But then I started getting advanced pretty quick. I started really flying more instrument stuff, which I didn't have a lot of instrument time. Obviously, aerobatics, I had no experience in aerobatics, had no experience in formation flying. Got to spin the plane for the first time, stuff that I really had no clue what I was doing. So then I kind of got on step with everyone else, and at that point we're pretty much a level playing field.
Did you have any problems with like air sickness or anything?
No, I was pretty good with that. Very fortunate. I have a pretty solid stomach. I think the only time I ever felt sick was as an instructor myself in the back of the plane.
Well, what would you say the hardest part, for you, even with your hours? I mean, what did you have, like 100 hours or so by the time you?
Yeah, I had about 250 hours or so before I got to
Mm,
flight school. I'd say the hardest part for me was just adapting to the way the Navy did things instead of the civilian world.
yeah,
You're very, there's a difference between Air Force and Navy. Navy tends to be a little more lax, but even the Navy is more stringent than civilian
right.
flying. You have to follow a checklist. You have to do everything, by the book. Civilian flying, once you get comfortable with it, you just kind of do a flow and you're good to go. But that wasn't really accepted in primary flight training.
Yeah. So they rack and stack you at this point. Your grades were obviously pretty good.
Yeah,
Where'd you head off to next?
yeah. So then I went to Kingsville, so just across the desolate wasteland of South Texas to reach Kingsville. So it was pretty close to Corpus Christi, so it wasn't that big of a commute for me. And then, yeah, I started flying the T-45A Goshawk there. And that's, I think, where it really kind of, kicked in that I was really going to step up my game, because I'd tell you the first flight in a jet after being in a prop was like, wait a second, I'm still back on the runway and the jet's gone. I'm like trying to climb back in the cockpit for the rest of the flight. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. The A model, does that have a HUD, or is that the old steam gauge?
I mean, well, it's all steam gauges. It does have a HUD, but it's not useful at all. When I instructed in the A later on, I would actually just leave the HUD off. Wouldn't even use it.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me about the T-45. So you do that. Were you back in when the T-45 was the whole program, or did you go T-45? Was it A4 for a little while there?
No, so back then they were splitting T2. You go T2 and then T45 in Meridian, but Kingsville was all T45. So I was all T45 right from the beginning. And that was a great program. And it was, gosh, I don't know, about 10 months or so, I think, maybe a little bit longer. And it was great. I mean, the basic formation, basic instrument stuff, but then you started getting the really fun stuff like the tactical formation flying and learning how to drop bombs for the first time, doing air-to-air gunnery, ACM, and then going to the boat for the first time. Obviously, is a big one for everybody.
So tell me about the boat, man. What was it like the first time?
Well, so for me, it was a little bit unique because so I don't know if you experienced the same thing, but in Navy flight training, they have what's called an on-wing instructor. So it's the guy that kind of, he's with you right from the very beginning in your early phases of flying. So my on-wing instructor was also what's called a lead safe. So one of the instructors that would take you out to the boat for the first time, drop you off and say, okay, there's the boat, good luck. So the first day of my CQ det, we're out in Jacksonville, Florida, and I wasn't flying that day. I was staying in the hotel, just kind of hanging out, relaxing, while other people went to the boat for their first day. And my on-wing instructor was lead safe and taking some students out of the boat, and he crashed into the water, died. The guy in his back seat died as well. And so I get a phone call, hey, we got a all officers meeting, at the hotel. At this time, I didn't know what was going on. We all met, and they said, hey, okay, here's the deal. He died, and take whatever time you need. But Stewart, you're going at 5 a.m. You ready? I was like, wait, we're still going to the boat? Like, the dude just died, So for me, that was kind of my first realization that, hey, naval aviation is no joke. I mean, things don't stop even when somebody dies. So yeah, it was a pretty. It flipped the switch, let's say, in my mind.
Yeah,
kind of what aviation was like.
What was the cause?
Yeah, so apparently he had a backseat rider who was an A-10 guy. He was an Air Force A-10 guy. Just wanted to go out, get a ride out to the boat, see what that was like. Was a bigger guy, and apparently when they entered the brake, the stick in the back cockpit got stuck in the leg restraint lines. So he wasn't able to right himself, and he just basically turned and right into the water. Tried ejecting at low altitude, and basically both of them just ejected right into the water.
God, that's awful, dude. That is a early reminder of how dangerous this business is. So
yeah, absolutely.
Did you go at 5 a.m. the next?
Sure did. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yep, sure did. I remember, going into the break and being like, all right, game time.
Wow. Okay, well, I mean, what was it like when you finally landed? God, that's terrible, man.
Yeah.
Did you compartmentalize it? I mean, was it just
surprisingly, yeah.
It's out of your head. You're just trying not to.
Yeah, that's one of the great things I have to say about Navy flight training is that they drill it into you so much that you can just be down on stem power, and it's just muscle memory. So I rolled into the groove and was just meatball lineup, angle of attack the whole way, not thinking about anything else. And it wasn't only until I So they trap you the first time, so you catch the wire, and then they pump you full of gas, so you got a full bag when you go around again. So they trap me. I taxi clear, and I'm sitting there with a hose attached, looking around, going, "Man, I'm on a boat in the middle of the ocean, in a jet on a boat in the middle of the ocean." It was crazy, you know. So that was kind of like, I, was off stem power again, actually thinking, and then the first cat shot. It's like, okay, this is fun, you know.
Yeah,
So I was able to put everything that happened the day before kind of in the back and just actually really enjoyed it.
that's badass. That's I
Yeah.
mean, it's good that you overcame. So after T-45s, the Navy training is a little different. You guys do all the tactical stuff after the boat. Is that when you kind of do the Navy version of IFF, where you do
No,
dogfighting?
so I think they've changed it now. So back then, you finished everything so that when you finish at the boat after your last flight, you actually got your soft wings.
Oh wow.
So you get back from getting all your traps you needed at the boat, and they rip off your name tag, slap on your wings, and that was your
Wow.
soft wing. So yeah, I've been done with everything going to the boat deck. So
Okay.
after we came back, I think there was a couple, one or two flights we had to complete just to knock them out,
Did you already know
and
where
then
you
it
were
was
going next?
selection. No, not at that point. That we found out, I'd say like a week or two later.
Okay. And so
Yeah,
you was the Hornet your first pick, or I mean,
it
I'm
was
a
my second.
okay. What
My
was your
first was Tomcats.
Tomcats?
So shout out to Oral. Yeah, all the wonderful Tomcat lovers out there in Moverland. Yeah, so Tomcats, obviously, like most people my generation, Top Gun was the thing,
Yeah.
and I was like, hey, the Tomcat's going away. I might want to fly it before it does. So that was my first choice. But the problem was, I think I was first or second in my class going to the boat, but I was 10 of 10 at my boat deck. So my landing grades were not the greatest, let's say.
You were
So
stressed out. I mean, you had a lot going on.
yeah, right.
That's
Yeah,
just yeah. I
yeah.
mean,
I think I was having too much fun. I think I just, didn't stress enough, maybe.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow.
Tomcats was my first choice. Hornets was my second, and that's what I got. So yeah, a couple weeks later, I got winged and moved to Virginia Beach. Went to 106 for the Hornet Rag. Spent the first couple months kind of stashed with the LSOs, that were getting ready to, take out new F-18 pilots to the boat day and night. So I was just going out to the outlying field and writing their passes and learning how to do LSO shorthand, which is all the chicken scratch, how they write down what their grades are. So I did that for a temporary job, and then started class. And day one, my first simulator, I arrived at the sim building just as the second plane struck the World Trade Center. So 9/11 was my first simulator in the F-18.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Wow. How'd you find out? I mean, did they cancel you or pull you out, or I mean,
No, I walked in. I literally walked into the sim building, and in the foyer there, right outside, there was a TV, and I was like, man, there's smoke coming from the World Trade Center. What happened? And they're like, oh, a plane crashed into it. And I was like, what an idiot. I mean, that tower is pretty tall. I'm thinking pilot error, some moron, flying out of LaGuardia or something, missed the World Trade Center. And then just then the second one hit, and I was like, yeah, this wasn't an accident. So
yeah,
again, mindset shift. At that point, I'm like, my life's about to change.
we're going to
So,
war. Yeah.
yep, yep. So finished
Wow.
that sim. The base was put on lockdown. Only essential personnel, and we just got to work.
Wow. Were you flying C models or A's?
So the flying C models and D's in the RAG. Yeah, and that's yeah. I didn't fly an A until I got to 204.
It's a wonderful machine. It is a great
Mm-hmm.
airplane. They don't have
It
them
is.
very
I
well.
actually missed it. Now we're flying C's again, so I missed the A.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But so now we're on a war footing, and I mean, how'd the rag go? I mean, the Hornet. So did every flight now take this incredible significance that hey, I'm training for something that's probably going to be for real here shortly?
You know, it, yeah, in a way it did, but at the same time, it also felt very normal. It felt like this is what you do in the military is you prepare for war. So I didn't think that that my class or the instructors paid any more significance to what was going on in the world. They had a job to do, was to teach us the weapon system, and they did it. And I had a job to do to learn the weapon system, and I did that. But it was, when we went out to El Centro for strike debt, we put an emphasis on the fact that, hey, we were going to be dropping bombs pretty soon, probably, and so we needed to really perfect our skills. So yeah, it was a pretty normal experience, I'd say, but we did know what was happening. We knew what was going to happen when we
Yeah.
finished.
Yeah. Well, on a lighter note, I mean, what'd you think the first time you got in the Hornet and lit the afterburners, man? Have to take off.
And that was awesome. Yeah, I still enjoy it. It's such a rush. Every
Yeah.
time you plug in the afterburners and start, careening down the runway, it's like, yeah, this is pretty fun.
It's a good job. It really is. And then what do you think the first time you go fight with the Hornet? Because, man, the alpha of that thing is just, I mean,
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. I mean, these days now my neck's a little bit stiffer. So, if I get defensive, I'm pretty much stuck there because I don't
Mirrors.
know where the guy is anymore. Yeah. I use the mirrors a lot more than I used to. But back then, when I was like craning my head around and leaning my head on the canopy and doing whatever I could, but it was a blast to fight when I was younger. Now it's still fun. It's just not quite the same.
It's still gentlemanly. It's a gentleman's
Yeah,
jet. Yeah.
it can be. Yeah.
So for assignment out of the RAG, was it a rack and stack again, or was it just here's what's available? You're an East Coast guy because you went to 106.
Yeah. So they basically say what is available, what squadrons are available to you. So for us, you can either go West Coast, East Coast, and then you can go to CAG 5 out in Japan. To do that, to go out to Japan or to join a squadron on cruise, you had to be what was called Pri-A. And that was somebody that, again, had really good grades. So they give them a couple extra traps at the boat day and night to make them ready to go right on deployment. So again, I was, top one or two of my class going to the boat, and I wanted to go to Japan. That was my thing. Like, hey, I'm young, I'm single, I'm gonna go to Japan. So I put that as my number one choice. And then I think after my first night, the LSOs came and said, hey, I think we're going to stop you early. So you won't be Pri-A anymore, but we'll still qual you. So they were afraid that if they had let me go a couple more, that I might actually disqualify myself. So I qualified. And then I got picked to go to VFA 87, which was one of the first squadrons that responded after the World Trade Center attacks. They were actually on their way home on the Enterprise when the attacks occurred, and they turned around. So they were some of the first ones flying sorties over Afghanistan.
So did you go?
And I was their first new guy. So
yeah,
I was their first new guy after they came back from that cruise. So a bunch of salty, war seasoned aviators, and then young Farley shows up, and hey guys, how you like me now?
Hey guys, I know things. Yeah, I'm smart too. Wow. So you didn't go with them immediately. You weren't that early that you could make the first.
Yeah, no, I was still in the RAG while they were doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was? I mean, how'd you like showing up to your first combat squadron? A lot different than what you expected, or pretty much what you?
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool. That there were a lot of really great guys in that squadron, and very very professional. Their goal was to get everyone brought up to speed. So they were very big on getting in the books and getting in the tactics and really taking it to the advanced level. So where I thought I knew everything coming out of the RAG, I realized I don't know anything, and so I'm listening to these guys and getting in the books, and then we right after joining, we went on a workup cycle. So we're doing the Strike Fighter Advanced Readiness Program there in Oceania for the air-to-air stuff, and then we went out to Fallon to go do the air-to-ground portion. Quickly followed that up with Air Wing Fallon, and then around this time is when all the chatter about Saddam Hussein and Iraq was starting to kick off, and the weapons of mass destruction. And so we kind of knew when we were leaving on the boat to do our Comp2X, or our composite training unit exercise, that we weren't going to be coming home. So we packed like we were going on cruise. And I still remember being off the coast of Puerto Rico as we were bombing Rosie Roads, and the ship CEO came on and said, we're going to war.
Oh crap.
So I remember the whole boat erupted in cheers. Everyone was really excited and pumped to go, and we just steamed straight across the Atlantic into the Med. And next thing you know, we're in the Eastern Mediterranean, getting ready to fly into Iraq.
So you were on the earliest days of OIF, Operation Iraqi
Yep. So
Freedom.
yeah. The shock and awe is we were supporting. There were two carriers in the Med. We'd fly through Turkey and enter northern Iraq. So we were supporting SOF and OGA assets that were on the ground with close air support. And
That's
so we were there
Special
the first night.
Operations Forces, right? SOF
Yeah,
for the
Special Operations
Turkey.
Forces and other governmental agencies.
Oh wow, wow. So a lot of close air support missions and stuff.
Yeah, in fact, every mission that I flew, I took off with a full load, whatever it was. We flew with the JDAM GPS guided bombs, the JSOW, which is the standoff weapon that glides. Flew with HARM, flew with Hellfire. We flew with a lot of different stuff, and we came back empty every single time.
So you were doing SEAD
So
out there too. Suppression of
we were
enemy air
doing
defenses.
all, yeah,
Holy crap.
yeah,
So was it a high
yeah,
threat
not
environment?
as good. So at the time, there was a big, they call it the super MES, the missile engagement zone. It was all through the central part of Iraq. And our goal was to roll that back. And so I was the SLAMI RSME, which is the standoff land attack, missile expanded response or whatever it is. And I was proposing we use that because that has a long range. It can go a long way, fly a whole profile, and then you can get it in. But they kept, no, we're going to use conventional weapons. We're going to use, laser guided bombs. We're going to use that kind of stuff. And like, but this is a missile that's trying to shoot us. Okay. So there was one mission, and they said, hey, we've got this I think it may have been an SA-3. It was targeting coalition aircraft. We need you to take it out. You've got a JSOW on board. Like, that's a standoff weapon. Perfect. I can drop it, let this thing glide, opens up, bomblets fall, blows up the missile site. We're good. But we want you to get battle damage assessment, BDA. I'm like, all I have is a Nighthawk FLIR pod, which is no good. I mean, you have to basically be like 5 miles away from the thing to see it. Oh, that's okay. Just follow your JSOW in. So I'm scratching my head thinking, wait, you want me to fly into the missile zone just so you can see that I blew it up? Yeah, okay. So fortunately, there was a CJ out there, and I heard he say, hey, we're going to go with you. I had no idea who he was or what he was doing. Just some random voice that said, we'll go with you. He sounded confident, so I believed him.
That's an F-16, by the way, for people wondering. F-16 Block 50.
Yep. And so I dropped the JSOW. We start trucking into the zone and to the missile engagement zone. And I'm looking around for missiles coming up at me because by that point we'd been shot at before, AAA and other missiles. So I was looking, and out of the corner of my eye, I see this blossom, and it's from the area where the missile site is. So I'm thinking that's the plume of the rockets firing the missile coming at me. So I started, breaking away from it and telling my lead, heads up, missile launch. And he goes, yeah, dude, that's your JSOW blowing up. And I looked in my pod, and sure enough, you can see all the little bomblets blowing up. So yeah, it was a fine moment for Farley there.
Yeah, well, dude, that's an awesome. So, AAA, flak, you're seeing all this stuff. You're seeing SAM launches at all? Did you?
Yeah.
You actually saw?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we saw a lot of SAM launches, but the good thing was they were afraid to actually turn on their radar because they were so afraid of the harm that they would just shoot these telephone poles up in the sky blind and just hope to hit something. So you'd see it fly up, but it wasn't, coming anywhere near you. So you quickly learned it was really nothing to be afraid of.
Jeez. So how long were you in theater doing OIF stuff?
So we did that. Think about it. I think we were there about 4 months, and then we rotated off station and started coming home.
So shock and awe was like 2 weeks, right before.
Yeah, that was real quick, and then we started kind of into the more sustainment phase. So, because again, we were operating in northern Iraq, so we had a lot of the smaller units that just didn't have a lot of support. That's who we were supporting. So even while the ground forces were moving in and from the south, we still had to provide air support to the guys in the north.
So it was more pre-planned targets at first, and then moving into more traditional, like close air support, just checking on station with a JTAC and hey, what do you need, kind
Yeah.
of deal. What?
Yeah, towards the end, that's pretty much what it was. But every time we launched, they also gave us a target pack of where the Iraqis had buried their tanks and said, hey, if you don't drop your bombs before you come back to the boat, just find a tank that's not glowing and drop your bomb on it. So
Oh,
that's
really?
what we would do. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean that's pretty cool. Did you like were you seeing was it high intensity conflict with the dudes up in the north? Were they engaged in a lot of firefights, troops in contact kind of stuff?
Yeah, they were. In fact, I mean, there were several times where I was providing close air support, and you can just hear the gunfire in the background, and you know, they were like, we dropped all our bombs, and they're like, "What else you got?" We're like, "We got 20 mic," and they're like, "All right, you're cleared hot to strafe." So
Jeez.
it was basically whatever we could do for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty high intensity for those guys, and there were a few that were you could tell they were other governmental agencies or something because they were talking more trucker calm on the radio, you know, just kind of BSing with you. They're like, yeah, we're sitting here in the rain. We've been here a couple days, and oh, there's your hit, nice one, yeah, you know. So
Dude,
it
that's
was a little interesting.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, was there any, I mean, I know the Iraqi Air Force didn't put up much of an air fight, but was there much of an air threat in the early days? Or, I mean, is anybody even airborne?
no, no, and we launched with at least one radar guided missile, one heat seeking missile every single mission in the beginning, but then we finally realized we didn't need to do that, and we could, save the gas for coming back because we did see things in the air, but they were in Iran. I think the Iranians were kind of keeping tabs on us just to make sure we didn't spill across the border. But that was
Yeah.
it. I mean, Iraq they didn't put anything up in the air.
Wow. Well, I guess you could go bomb well, they had the MiG-25s that were buried or whatever. I guess that was another one that
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
dirt there. So after 4 months, you come back home. I mean, what was next for Farley? Did you get your call sign
Yeah.
yet, by the way? Was this where you were
So
named?
yeah, I got my call sign when I joined '87.
Oh, really?
It's it was a nod to Chris Farley, some Tommy Boy mannerisms that I had. Um, yeah, so it's yeah, Mondays with Mover and whiskey with Farley is kind of what it amounted
Whi-
to.
Whiskey with Farley. That's awesome. Well, dude, when you make your channel, you start that Whiskey with Farley, it sounds like a great name.
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
winner right there.
yeah,
I'm
you
gonna trademark it right now.
write that down. So what was next for you when you got home from that? I mean, dude, that's pretty intense. You probably needed some downtime, huh?
Yeah, I did. I was really looking forward to having some downtime, but unfortunately, there was a squadron down in Beaufort, South Carolina, that needed somebody to go on cruise again, single guy. So
Yeah.
yeah, their XO called up and said, "Hey, can we have Farley?" And we said, "Sure." So yeah,
Dude,
so
they
I
wanted
moved
you.
down.
They needed you.
Yeah,
I mean, dude, this is like the NFL draft here.
yeah, that's what it felt like. It felt a lot like the draft. Yeah, so I went down to Beaufort, South Carolina, and they were on the bright side. I didn't have to go through the workups because they were already done. On the downside, they were going right on cruise. So so yeah, I joined them right as they were getting ready to leave on cruise. We went on cruise, headed back over to the Middle East. This time we didn't stop in the Med. We actually transited down to into the Gulf, flew missions into Iraq from the south this time, and
Oh,
then
wow.
also into Afghanistan. Yeah.
So what were I mean, obviously same stuff, right? I mean, is it any different in the South?
So it was by that point, unfortunately, all the hostilities. I say unfortunately, like it's a bad thing, but all the hostilities had pretty much ended. The Iraqi army had already capitulated, so we were basically doing nothing. We were still providing on-call CAS for coalition forces on the ground, but there was indirect fire they were taking, so we'd fly overhead, we'd get our eyes on, and then they'd stop shooting, and the ROE was such that we couldn't actually employ. So we didn't do a whole lot. Didn't drop a single bomb on that deployment. We did a lot of low-level pipeline recce's to make sure that their oil infrastructure wasn't being destroyed. That was a big thing. We wanted to protect the
Hmm.
Iraqi infrastructure. A lot of shows of force, like some coalition convoys thought, hey, there's a truck tailing us. Can you scare them off? I mean, okay. So, we'd fly down real low at night, kick in the afterburners, spit out some flares, and watch a little truck go off the side of the road. Some poor farmer probably. He's like, oh, I don't want to get too close to that convoy up there. And then all of a sudden they get scared, and drive off the road. So,
Wow. And Afghanistan, I mean, was that higher intensity or same stuff?
Afghanistan was pretty much the same. We were supporting a lot of pre-planned operations, so we were really there, just in case stuff happened. In fact, the big coalition push that we went up there for never really materialized. Apparently, from what I remember is that there was some spy tipped them off or something, so the forces weren't where we thought they were going to be, and so
Yeah.
it never really happened. But I did get to fly, the long 8-hour mission, fly up to Afghanistan, circle over a piece of the ground, and then fly back to the boat.
Yeah. Yeah. And then was that 4 months as well?
So that one, all said and done, that was about a 6 month deployment. Came back from that one, and we wanted to prove that the Navy could quickly turn a carrier back on deployment. So we went back on the boat, but this time we only went as far as the United Kingdom, flew off the coast of Scotland, did some exercises with the Brits, flew low levels over Loch Ness, had some fun there. And then after about 2 months, came home.
Did you do
And
the mock loop up there?
no, no, never. We had to make up our own low level routes,
Nice.
and so we named them like Braveheart and Claymore, and other like Scottish themed names. And I still remember we were supposed to go drop bombs on this one rock that was an island, off the coast, and we were supposed to work with some of their JTACs, and we're like, all right, we're gonna pickle them all and just go to fly this low level route. So that's what we check on, drop all our bombs, and see ya,
That's
and spend
awesome.
the rest of the time kind of goofing off. But it was such a fun time. July in the North Atlantic, still got to wear poopy suits, so it's not really the greatest place in the world having to wear the cold weather stuff. But
Wow.
flying off a
Did you
boat's a good time.
do any dissimilar? Did you get to dogfight any cool jets?
No, we worked with some, but like some large force exercises, but I don't think we did any dissimilar with them. Closest thing to dissimilar was probably with some guys in the air wing, on my first cruise that maybe it was my second cruise. They ended up flying with some Israeli F-15s, just kind of ad hoc. They showed up in the airspace and joined up on them, and the F-15 guy was like, "Hey, let's fight." So they did. They fought, and then came back, and CAG was like, "Hey, those guys are flying with live missiles, by the way." Oh yeah, okay. So no more of that. But yeah, that was the
Wow.
only dissimilar that I remember on those first couple cruises. But I got some opportunity on my next one. So we came back from the little 2 month thing, and there was a Marine Hornet squadron on the West Coast that was supposed to deploy on the Lincoln, and they said, "Hey, we're not ready. We're not safe to go." So our skipper said, "Hey, we'll go." So we flew from Beaufort, South Carolina, over to San Diego and hopped on the Lincoln, and we did a Westpac with them. Um, so second consecutive Christmas, on a boat. But we did do an exercise in Thailand, and so we got a chance to fly with some Thai and seeing fighters and stuff.
How long had you been on a ship this whole time? I mean, so you're pushing a year, right, of time at sea by this point in your career?
Yeah, I think I ended up spending, I want to say it was like close to 20 months at sea. My first sea tour, which is only 36 months.
What's daily life like on that? I mean, is it a grind? Does it? I mean, I did a week and it was enough. I can't imagine
Yeah,
a year.
yeah. Well, yeah, you just take that week and multiply it out, and it's about what it is. I mean, you read a lot of books, you play a lot of video games, you watch a lot of movies, you eat a lot, work out, and sleep. I always figured too, if you slept 12 hours a day, then cruise is only half as long. So
I mean, dude, as much it's like prison. You show up and you're jacked when you leave because you've been working out so much.
yeah, a lot like
Wow.
prison, except I usually ate more than worked out. So it didn't really go that way for me.
Yeah. So what'd you get to fight with the Singapore? deal?
Yeah, so they had some. Let's see, we fought F-16s from Singapore. There were some F-5s, I think, from Thailand that we fought, um, and I think that was it. Yeah, I know we had some Air Force F-15s that came from Hawaii that came out and played with us too.
How'd you do? How'd you do against the mighty Viper? Well, the MLU Viper, but it's a Viper still.
Pretty good. I felt pretty good. Um, I'd say I'm a kind of maybe a below average dogfighter, but I always felt pretty good against the F-16 and the F-15 until I went to Top Gun. And when I went to Top Gun and fought the instructors in F-16, I got shamed horribly. So it's a really good airplane. Maybe I just fought some younger guys, some experienced guys that maybe didn't know all the tricks of the trade.
Yeah, yeah. So you finally come back from that. You're just finding these cruises everywhere you can go. Did you stay home? What happened
Yeah,
next?
yeah. Well, fortunately, my squadron was being disestablished, so they were like, "Hey, everyone's leaving the squadron, going on shore tour. So no more sea tour, no more sea time for Farley." And yeah, I went basically moved down to Kingsville, back to
Mm,
Kingsville to be an instructor. So by this point, I'm married and get to Kingsville, have my first kid. Now I'm starting to feel like a family man, and hey, I'm done doing the whole sea thing. It was fun as a lieutenant JG or as a lieutenant, but after that, it starts to get a little hard being
yeah.
away from family.
Well, I mean, especially when you have a family, it's a single guy's.
Yeah,
It's a young man's game. Um,
absolutely, young man's game.
so what? I
Yeah.
mean, what's it like as an instructor? I mean, you're coming back. You've done it as a student, but now you're teaching kids that have never done this before. What's that
Yeah.
like?
So before I left my squadron in Beaufort, my CEO pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I want you to remember this. You're going to see a kid, and it's your 100th time of seeing somebody make that mistake, but it's his first time making it." And that really stuck with me. And I thought, okay, like, because yeah, it was true. I mean, after seeing the same mistake over and over again, your patience level goes way down. But I had to remind myself, hey, it's his first time making it. So I really enjoyed it. I really had a good time. I became known as one of the guys that really prepared guys for landing at the boat. I did every CQ det because I spent so much time on the boat. They were like, hey, you know a lot about boats. Why don't you go out and run every single CQ detachment? So I did that while I was there.
Every single one.
Um,
When
every
when
single one.
when did you become an
Yeah,
LSO? Was this
I
in?
didn't. I was never an LSO.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
Yeah, never an LSO. So I was only a lead safe. So I took the students out to the boat, dropped them off, and said good luck. And but it was a really rewarding experience because you brief those kids in the morning and they're wired and they're scared, like nervous. And then when they walk back after landing on the boat, they have a swagger like you read about. I mean, it's like, yeah, I'm King Kong.
Yeah.
So it was pretty awesome seeing that.
A lot of people don't know, I mean, at least a lot of Air Force folks, that the first time with the boat is solo, right?
Yeah,
And as the instructor, you're just watching?
yeah, yeah. As the instructor, you basically circle overhead, and you're like the voice of God. So into the landing pattern, if it starts getting too stretched out, like if the guy's going upwind too far, you just come over the radio and say turn, and then you watch the little jet turn, and so you just kind of keep them corralled a little bit, and if they blow a tire or something and have to go divert, then you join up on them and you lead them back, make sure that they get back safely. So you're kind of there as a shepherd, but it's all on them.
Wow. Wow. How long were you an instructor?
I was just under 3 years, so I did it a little bit less than I was actually assigned for because I ended up getting offered a job as an admiral's aide for the Reserve Forces admiral, and so I took that job. And the reason I took it was because, again, I decided I'm not going back to sea. I want to get back in the Hornet though,
Yeah.
and the reserves had Hornets.
Okay.
So hey, if I go be an aide for an admiral, maybe I can get into what's called FPS, which is basically an active reservist, and then be at one of the Hornet squadrons, either there in New Orleans, which is where I am, or in Oceana. And so I did the Admiral's aide job, moved to New Orleans, and yeah, that was next for me. Was the Admiral was awesome. He was a ship driver, but he loved aviators, and so he said, "Hey, you're a Hornet guy. Let's get you qualled up so that you can fly with 204. They're right here in New Orleans."
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
So, I'm sitting in the office in my khakis with my loop on, and the squadron would call and say, "Hey, we're bombing today. You want to come fly?" And, "Hey, Admiral, what are you doing?" "Nothing. Why?" "They want me to go flying. Have fun. See you later." So yeah, that's how it went for me.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So you were kind of flying attached at 204.
Yeah.
Who was the skipper? Was this
So that was Fish. Fish was the skipper.
Oh wow.
Then, and he, yeah, and then when I joined the squadron, he was still the skipper for a little bit.
Wow. So you did a JTAC tour though, right? After in between there?
So yeah, after I joined 204.
Oh, so you were already at 204. Were you at FTS?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, funny story about that. So I applied for FTS while I was an Admiral's aide, and the results came out, and I didn't get it. And the chief of staff called me in his office, and he said, "Hey, you might want to tell the boss, that you didn't get FTS." I'm like, "Okay, sir." So I go in there, "Hey, Admiral, I didn't get FTS." And he goes, "That's okay, Jack. We'll get it on the next board." So I go home that night, and my phone rings, and it's a detailer, and he says, "Hey, this is a direct quote. Due to end strength manual requirements and blah blah blah, I can now offer you FTS. Do you accept?" I was like, "Yeah, I do. Thank you." So I go in the next morning. I said, "Hey, Admiral, they called and they said that I could have FTS." He goes, "Well, how did that happen?"
Imagine that.
Yeah, imagine that. Yeah. So yeah, I got FTS, got orders to 204, and joined them in, gosh, that would have been probably the beginning of 2009. I joined 204.
You are the longest tenured River Rattler.
Yes.
You're Scorch.
Don't say that. Also,
Sorry.
if I have my glasses down a little bit more on my nose, maybe.
You got to go on a rant. You got to go on some kind of level of rant before this.
Well, I'm working on the scotch, so
Yeah.
That's what usually fuels his rants. But
that'll loosen you up. So awesome, dude! I didn't know. So you did the FTS thing, which for everybody at home, that's a full-time support position. That's a reservist that's on active duty orders, making sure the squadron stays going. Tell me about the transition to flying 204, and this was your first time in the A model, so what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean it was awesome. Again, I've been a guest pilot with them, so I went and got my, I think I only got 5 hours. I think they took my 10 hours and waved it down to 5 out in Lemoore. And I showed up. I'm like, "Hey, I'm qualled." And they're like, "Great. You want to go do CAS?" Like, "I haven't done CAS in forever." "Sure, let's go." So we go out and fly close air support, and it was just, they threw me in the fire. I mean, back then it was a little less stringent. Now I'd say when people show up, it was a full-on training syllabus that you got to go through to get guys back in the saddle. But back then it was kind of like, "Yeah, you want to do this? Yeah, okay, go ahead." So I did that. It was pretty fun. When I joined the squadron officially, though, they were like, their big thing was, "We're going to work you up to send you to Top Gun, go through the adversary course, get you all qualled up." So that point is when the training syllabus really began. I mean, that was back to square one, feeling like a brand new Hornet pilot, learning how to do the BFM briefing labs and all the chalk talks and all that stuff. So they worked me through pretty hard on that one, and later the year I joined them. I went out to Top Gun and finished the course out there, and came home. I think it was like right before Christmas time. Came home and then got word that, "Hey, we need to send somebody to Afghanistan for an individual augmentee assignment," and I got chosen. Lucky me.
Well,
so that's kind of how I ended up doing that JTAC tour, which was kind of what the Navy thought it was not what the Air Force thought it was, which is standard. So the Navy thought we were going to be air planners and we were going to, work in, and some talk at Bagram, and we're going to be planning missions and stuff. And the Air Force is like, that doesn't fit doctrine, but we need some ALOs, so we'll send you to Joint Firepower Course, and send you out to the TAC-P, out some FOB, and so that's what most of us ended up doing. So I went out and worked with an EA SOS attached to the 4th Brigade Combat Team, the 82nd Airborne, and yeah, it was a pretty awesome experience. I mean, in hindsight, sleeping in a tent, wasn't the coolest thing, but I'd rather be on the boat with my Xbox, but whatever.
Well, all right. So the acronym soup: Air Liaison Officer, Tactical Air Control Party. Basically, people who
Yep.
call in airstrikes with the snake eaters, with the guys on the ground. So, I mean, dude, we got a picture on the title card there, but you were carrying a rifle and in the stuff,
Yeah.
right? I mean, did you actually go and do some high speed stuff?
Yeah. So the colonel I worked for said, hey, we don't want you guys going outside the wire, but I was kind of on a small camp, and it was just me and a master sergeant, and I told the master sergeant, like, hey, I'm going stir crazy here, and he's like, all right, I'll leave your name off the list of outside the wire, unless you don't come back. So basically, I was able to let some of the guys have a break and went out and escort them. Just basically went out in a mine resistant armored vehicle, and drove out and escorted some of the ground units on missions.
Did you get to call in any airstrikes or anything while you were out there?
No, I didn't. So there was a qualified JTAC that was the one who was calling in the airstrikes. I was basically operating as a ROMAD, they call it. ROMAD is basically just a driver, radio maintainer. He basically holds security for the JTAC, so make sure that, while he's focusing on his charts and getting coordinates and calling in the 9 line and stuff, that somebody was watching the 6. So I was able to do that, which, having been fired at from, in a cockpit with AAA and stuff, I got to see what it was like being fired at on the ground. A little different experience, standing out on a hill next to an MRAP, and rounds started going by. And of course, I dived behind the truck, and this Army sergeant looks down at me, hey, sir, what you doing on the ground? I'm like, they're shooting at us. He goes, well, shoot back. Like, okay, got it.
Wow. I mean, so what is it like being on the other side? I mean, I've done so much CAS. I've never been on the ground, watching from above. I mean, what is it? Do you see the jet? I mean, or is it pretty much?
Yeah, you do. You see the jet. That's a pretty awesome thing. When you need that firepower and you call it in, the nice thing about my background, and I was able to talk to my JTACs and kind of get them spun up on, hey, when you're calling, talk-ons, and you're trying to talk their eyes onto the target, you got to be careful. Here's what they see, here's what you see, and so that was a really cool perspective. But yeah, it was awesome. I saw gun runs from Apaches, A-10s. We did have some Super Hornets that were supporting us. In fact, a couple of my old Hornet buddies were flying off the carrier, and I was chatting with them on secret chat. I give them our kill box and call sign and said, hey, come to us.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty cool experience.
What was, the preferred close air support platform for, you or the dudes on the ground? Like, what was their aircraft of choice if they had their pick of calling something in?
AC-130, 100% of the time, obviously, but only SOP assets got those. A-10 would be the second one. Everyone loves an A-10, myself included. And then they actually like the F-18 next. And what they said was, it sounds like, they're like, man, those Navy pilots just sound relaxed. It sounds like they're sitting in a recliner, smoking a Lucky. They said the Air Force guys, and again, these are Air Force JTACs. They're like, the Air Force guys are so wound up about ROE, and the Navy guys are like, oh yeah, we can do that. Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that was it. We did have a B1 do some work for us. That really they only could do. None of the other assets could, because every time the Taliban, heard the jets come in overhead, they stopped shooting, and so ROE was lost at that point. So we were able to give a B1 9 lines for all the DIMPs, all the targets ahead of time, and then the minute they started shooting, we just clear hot. And they just, awesome. From 40, 50,000 feet, whatever they were. They just dropped their bombs. And yeah.
Wow. So how long was this? Were you in country? And which country was this? Afghanistan or Iraq?
Yeah. Yeah. Afghanistan.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was Afghanistan. It was supposed to be a year, but it ended up being about 6 months for me because I was one of the lucky ones who didn't get promoted from lieutenant to lieutenant commander. And so the Navy said that I had to leave the Navy, go become a civilian. And I think it was within 6 months of the board date. So that would have put me at basically a week after that year-long deployment. And the Navy was like, that's fine. You can just stay there in Afghanistan. And but I was like, I got to find a job. You know, I got a family to worry about. And like, don't worry about it. But that's one thing where the Air Force came through. The colonel I worked for said, he basically called the admiral and said, I don't care what you do with him, but he's not going to stay in Afghanistan. So at that point, the Navy kind of said, okay, whatever, come home. So I flew back home, reintegrated to being, basically at that point, just it was my final days of being active duty. And I think I spent about 2 weeks where I was out of the Navy, and then I affiliated as a reservist as a part-time reservist with 204. So stayed with the same squadron and doing the same mission, but just as a part-timer.
So we kind of glossed over it, but going back, what was Top Gun like?
Top Gun, I think going through when I did, my experience level was awesome. So most of the instructors were my students in Kingsville. So I knew them from a different perspective. So I just had fun with it, Obviously, I listened to them. They're real smart. They know their stuff. And the flying is phenomenal. I mean, the Fallon Range Training Complex is just one of the best ranges we have over land. And so I just had a blast. I mean, it was long days, early morning wake ups, mass briefs, flying long debriefs. Usually get some time to work out, maybe hit the O Club for a little bit for a couple beers, and then you're right back to planning for the next day. So yeah, it was busy but fun.
Yeah, did you get really good at BFM finally?
No, still didn't get good, but I got good enough. I got good enough to pass.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they fly back. They still had the Vipers,
Yeah.
Block 15s or Block 20s or whatever they're flying. The old
Yeah.
Pakistani jets. I think they're Block 15s. Old airplanes.
Yeah, they had one engine. Does that sound right?
Yeah. One engine, one tail.
Yeah.
Greatest airplane in the world. It's about
those are them.
Right. So I'll ask because a lot of people don't know. What is the mission of VFA 204? What was your primary? What did you do as a reservist at 204?
So VFA 204 was at the time the Strategic Reserve Hornet Squadron for the Navy. So if an active duty Hornet Squadron couldn't fulfill its role, theoretically, we as a squadron could mobilize and deploy. So the last time that happened, VFA 201, which disestablished after my first cruise, they actually were on my first cruise. So
really?
We needed more Hornet squadrons. And so they were like, okay, 201's it. So 201 rolled in. And so I got to fly with a bunch of reservists as a nugget, as a brand new guy on my first cruise. I flew with a bunch of salty, 04s and 05s, all Top Gun patch wearers, FedEx pilots, American Airlines pilots, Delta pilots, whatever. And they were awesome. I mean, they were really good. They knew their stuff. Easily 8 of the top 10 ball flyers every single line period on the boat were 201 guys. So that's when I joined 204. That's what our mission was. But we had the secondary mission, which was really kind of our primary mission of being Red Air. So we were adversaries for fleet training. We would fly all over the country. We'd fly out to Guam. We flew out to Alaska, out to California, Florida, and we're basically replicating threat tactics and allowing the fleet squadrons to train on their tactics against us, and to basically validate what they're training before they deploy. So we did a lot. Now that's pretty much our only mission. We don't go to the boat anymore. which I think you got a picture of the last time 204 went to the boat.
I'm in that picture.
But yeah, we don't go to the boat. What's that? Yeah,
I'm in that
you
picture.
were.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I know that guy.
I couldn't remember when you had the orange thing and everything.
I still have that orange polo shirt. I was the best ODO ever.
Burn that thing.
Yeah. And the other thing is people want to know, what is an A+ versus a C model? How different is that?
So, how different is it? There's a couple small things, like the engine instruments, fuel instruments are now digitized in the C. The map is in the A model was like this microfiche, that would usually get burned out by the sun. And so if it didn't say you were over Russia, it was going to say you're over nothing because it was burned out. But the C model has a digital moving map. And we've got some other new toys that the A model wasn't capable of having, like data link. So we can have fighter-to-fighter data link. So now when we're doing red air, we can actually get into what we call the red net, where we can see each other and the fighters, so we can provide reverse control. So
cool.
We can tell them where we are based on their position, but they can't see us. So that's kind of a nice thing to have, which we didn't have in the A+.
Wow. And on the civilian side, you've been doing, you're flying 737s, right?
Right.
What was that? Yeah. How was that going from, I'm a fighter pilot, to I got to go fly with this other guy? Was that a tough transition, or was it pretty easy for Farley to get used to?
Well, I would say it was a tough transition because I didn't do it right away. I mean, I stiff-armed the whole airline pilot thing for a couple of years. I said, no, man, I've been flying a fighter. I don't want to be a bus driver. So I said, nope, not going to do it. Went into business, and then realized, no, I don't want to work for a living either. So I got to find something else. So I'm going to go back to the airlines, So I became an airline pilot, and it honestly, at least with my airline and my experience, I've been flying with guys who are awesome. It's like flying with another squadron buddy. So every now and then you'll get somebody you have nothing in common with, and it's pretty quiet, which is fine sometimes. But other times it's you just can't stop talking and laughing and having a good time. So yeah, it's been a good experience, and I actually enjoy it. I mean, I'm not banking and yanking and flying low level or anything, but it's still really fun.
Wow. Well, so what's next for you? I mean, you're still flying the Hornet. What does the future hold for Farley?
Yeah, so I think I am in my sundown phase, we'll call it. I was going to retire last year, but COVID, temporarily put a stop to that. So I was fortunate enough to get extended in the Navy, but I think I'm, if not this year, next year at the latest, I'll probably retire from the Navy, be an airline pilot full time, and pursue my other passion, which is writing books.
What are you writing about?
So primarily military thrillers, I'd say. So my first book, so I have 3. My first book was kind of sparked by my last deployment, which we didn't even talk about, which was a special operations task force.
Proceed, sir. Tell me.
Well, I can't say a whole lot about it.
I forgot about that. That was the one I was there for. I completely glossed over that. That was what, 2014, 15?
Yeah, I think it was 2015 maybe.
Yeah.
But that one was a year with a Joint Special Operations Task Force in AFRICOM. So I got to work with a lot of different units, leveraging what I experienced in Afghanistan, and did a lot of really cool stuff. We'll just leave it at that. But some of those experiences inspired me to write my first book. Totally unrelated, but there was a guy who I'd met on that deployment who died not too long after, and Senior Chief Ryan Owens. So he was part of an operation that I was also part of, and did some pretty heroic things. And I was like, man, there's some pretty amazing people, in this community. And so I wanted to honor them, if you will. And so I started working on the story. It took me about 5 years to finish. but I have a whole cast of characters all kind of in the agency special operations world, and they carried over into my second book. But my third book is a thriller. It's a supernatural thriller, kind of has an element of faith to it.
Aliens?
And more
Ghosts.
like I think more like voices that are guardian angels kind of thing. And that one all takes place in New Orleans and features an Air Force CCT as the
Cool.
main character. So
yeah, the first one's the one I read, right? Is that the one?
First one, yeah.
It is a very good book. It is a very good book. I'm looking forward to
Thank
somebody
you.
picking it up. Somebody's asking where do we get the books? And by the way, get your questions ready. If Farley's got time, we'll let the audience ask questions because they always ask good questions. So start getting those questions ready. But your books are unpublished, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I know I've read your books that you've self-published, and you're well, I would disagree with that. In fact, I've got a review coming on one of them. So
yes,
and it won't say terrible.
Terrible. TURRBLE.
Terrible.
Yeah.
But it's a hard business to break into, and for me, I have a stable career with the airlines. I'm not in any hurry. It's always kind of been my dream to have an agent and kind of go the traditional publishing route. So it's painful though. It's a hard process, hard business to break into. So short answer is you can't buy them anywhere. Long answer is hopefully in a year or two you will be able to.
Yeah.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's go to the questions. I will ask you the first question because it's the most common question. What is your scariest moment in an aircraft?
Scariest moment in an aircraft.
Or scariest story, scariest flight story.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting shot at, in my first cruise in Iraq was, definitely hands down the scariest. But that fear only lasts for a second, and it's quickly replaced by anger and like disbelief. Like, how dare you shoot at me?
How dare you, sir?
Right. So yeah, you know what? I'm going to kill you instead. So that obviously is, getting shot at hands down is probably the scariest. I haven't had any significant emergencies or anything like that. No, airplane related, but not in the airplane. I'd say the scariest moment was at the Reno air races. So you remember when that P-51 crashed?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I was there with a couple 204 buddies. We were in the VIP stands, right where that plane ended up hitting, and we just happened to be there, waiting to see which way this thing was going. When we realized it was coming right for us, and we just dove into the grandstands, and none of us were injured, thank God. But yeah, that was pretty scary.
The PTSD from that. I mean, I know some of the guys that were there that still have nightmares about seeing that stuff. And
yeah, I can still hear that engine at full throttle. I'll never forget the sound of that.
God. Jabroni asks, what was it like seeing the boots on the ground getting the air power they needed?
Awesome. Yeah. For me, that was everything. Even, before I had been on the ground, being in the air, my sole goal was to give them anything they needed. And hearing it on the radio and hearing the relief in their voice when we actually got the target, that was awesome. Seeing it on the ground and knowing what it meant to them and living with those guys was a completely different experience. But yeah, the guys on the ground, my hat's off to them.
Now, so having done that, when you went, because we did a lot of CAS training in 204, did you take that and kind of internalize it for your air to ground training when you would work with the JTACs? Was it something that like improved you as a pilot in general?
I think it definitely did. If anything, it gave me an appreciation for what the guys on the ground were asking for, and to do my darndest to give it to them. If anything, it just made it more imperative for me to be really good at that part of my job.
Gavin asked, what inspired you to begin writing? Any particular authors or role models in your life?
Growing up, Tom Clancy, Stephen King, Stephen Kuntz, Dan Brown, Dale Brown. There's a ton of guys I read growing up that definitely inspired me. Now, and I think there's a really good community of military veteran authors.
Yeah.
Um,
You're very active
uh,
on Twitter with that community, by the way. Which
yeah,
I'll put the link in. What is your here? I'll put it in the chat. How do people follow you? You're at JC Stewart.
no, it's at Jack Stewart Book for Twitter, or at Jack Stewart Books for Instagram and Facebook. Um, but yeah, the Twitter community is really good. There's some really good authors. Brad Taylor is pretty active in that community. Jeff Wilson, Brian Andrews, they write as a pair. Andrews and Wilson, their series, their 2-1 series is phenomenal. Those guys are really good. Yeah, I just been very fortunate. Don Bentley, he's a new author. His debut novel was last year. It's fantastic, but they're very uplifting and supportive to other veteran authors. And I think right now they're my inspiration. They're seeing those guys succeed means that, hey, maybe I can be in their shoes one day. And what's awesome about they see that in me, and they're also trying to help. So
That's
very
awesome.
very cool community.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm looking forward to seeing the breakthrough novel and the sales, and then we'll get you back on the channel and pretend like we didn't do an interview, and then do it again
Yeah.
for your book tour.
I'll have to come up with some new stories.
Yeah, you can just make them up. Honestly, I mean, uh, Eric wants to know, how much did you love wearing your poopy suit, and also did you treat the Paraloft folks? He must be a PR. Did you treat the PR folks well in your career?
Of course,
Still.
The people who take care of your flight gear are very important. So yeah, the Paraloft, that's where all our flight gear is: our helmets, masks, harness, G suit. Those things are essential to every time we go fly. So yeah, got to treat them well. Poopy suits, I hate it. Every single time I wore it, I hated it. It's uncomfortable.
Oh, dude,
it smells horrible when you take it off.
204 is the only place I ever actually had to wear one, by the way. And so Race 22 crew, this is neat. Hey, Farley, sorry that was your Reno experience. I was there that day as well. T6 race crew member. Come on back out. Nothing like the Reno Air Races.
Oh, absolutely. And I will say this: I have a better experience with the Reno Air Races. When I was a kid, my dad took me out of school. We drove from Seattle down to Reno. Went and saw the air races. Got to meet Pappy Bowington. Got to meet the Japanese fighter pilot who shot him down. I mean, it was a fantastic experience, and there's nothing like it. But yeah, that one sticks with me. Always will, but I'll definitely go back.
Hey, did you ever get to fight a Tomcat? Tomcat,
no. I got to fight them, but never fly one.
No, fight. That's what I'm saying. Did you ever get to fight one?
Yeah, absolutely.
How'd that go?
It was really good for us, because obviously the Hornet, we have aggressive pressure mindset. You just constantly point your nose at them, so they have to react, and it never gives them a chance to extend and go zone 5 and whatever else they're supposed to do. But
a split S. Aircraft 2 performs a split S. It's the last thing you want to do.
My first 2 deployments, we had Tomcats on the air wing. Great guys. Actually, one of the former Tomcat guys who became a Super Hornet guy actually lives in my neighborhood. Just saw him the other day. But they're all really good guys. Great community, a fantastic community. But at that point, it was the sundown of their jet, and so the radars were always broken. You launched to go fight 4 of them, and maybe one of them was able to play. But we had a great time.
I forgot to ask you these 2 questions, so by all means, do you have? We use Make Them Tell You No on this channel, and I know you're doing this with your book. But do you have a story or just something you overcame in your flying career where everybody told you it's never going to happen? You're never going to fly. You're never going to do this, and you made the absolute last person be the one to tell you no, and actually succeeded?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think I kind of hinted at it when they sent me home from Afghanistan early, because I didn't get promoted to lieutenant commander. I went back to 204 as a reservist on what was called continuation. So they basically, the Navy said, okay, you can't promote, but we're going to give you a chance to maybe promote as a reservist. And if you do, then you'll continue on with your career. So I did that. And and I didn't get it the first board. I didn't get promoted to lieutenant commander, and so I was thinking, man, here we go. I got one more year, and then I'm out. And I went and talked to the admiral I'd worked for, and he was like, hey, maybe it's just time for you to move on, go do something else. And I was like, yeah, I'm just not ready. I want to keep flying, keep serving my country. So I stuck it out, and then got promoted on my next look. I got promoted to 04. And then the funniest thing is I ended up getting promoted on my first look for commander. So being a lieutenant for 10 years obviously didn't hurt me at becoming a commander. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the second question I always ask, what advice do you have? We have a lot of people that want to be you, both as a fighter pilot and as an author. But what advice do you have to a young kid, teenager, in college, whatever, that wants to be a fighter pilot or go to the Naval Academy or just, do this profession and this calling?
I think, I think if the love is there, the love for aviation is there, they'll do what is necessary, just like I did. When I was at the Naval Academy, we had families that were assigned to us called sponsor families that kind of took you in on the weekends, fed you, gave you a place to relax. And I was headed out to the airport. I was going to rent an airplane and go fly. And the guy in my company said, hey, my sponsor family's going to pick me up. We're going to the airport. They have a hangar and a couple of airplanes. I was like, really? Yeah. Can I have a ride? So I met them, and I just became an FBO rat at that point. I'd go around from hangar to hangar and say, what do you got? Can I go fly with you? And, I flew in Stearman. I flew in old T6s. I flew in, Pitts, other aerobatic planes, Giles.
Giles 202. I flew one of those.
That's right. Yeah.
540 degree per second roll rate or something like that.
It was eye-watering. Yeah. Still didn't get sick, but it was eye-watering. But yeah, you just, if the love is there, you'll just go out to the airport, go fly, talk to people that fly, and it'll happen.
That's awesome. Perfect. Any aircraft, past, present, or future, that you would love to or wish you had flown?
There's several.
Just pick one. Yeah, just one.
Yeah, pick one. Okay. I'm gonna go with A-10. Honestly, I love that thing. Yeah, who wouldn't want to have a gun the length of your fuselage? That thing's awesome.
Dude, I tell you, if it weren't for the fact that it's slow, it would be the perfect. Like if they just put some bigger motors on it, it'd be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think slow is more my speed now, anyway, so I'll be happy with that.
Yeah. Well, let's do one more question, and I'll let you go. I've kept you far too long. I know you're a busy man. You got to get back to your writing and your editing, probably. Are you editing right now? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, I'm editing book 3 right now.
Oh, here's something about Jehemix. Probably not a good idea to answer on this channel. It's like,
I wouldn't know anything about it anyway.
Where are your troops, and can we go there and count them? Let's see here. Some of these questions we've already answered. That's why I'm trying to find the
I covered it all.
Dude,
I broke the internet.
You've been so good. It's just been, looking back, is there anything about your career you would like to do again? And if anything, what would you do differently?
Oh boy.
Is this where you show me the tattoo, back, the no regrets?
Yeah.
The no regrets.
Yeah, no regrets. Honestly, everything turned out exactly the way I wanted it to. I'm in a really good place. I'm in a great squadron right now. I've met a bunch of fantastic people. I got to be in 2 fleet squadrons, 3 different air wings, 3 carriers. Got to meet a ton of people, go to a lot of cool places, do some cool things. I don't think I'd do anything different, honestly.
Yeah. Are you gonna? It's 204. It's your sunset, but it's been one of the biggest parts of your career. Would you say that's been the most fulfilling, or would you say your early stuff was more fulfilling?
Yeah. Obviously, dropping bombs in support of the guys on the ground is the most fulfilling thing you can possibly do. Flying off an aircraft carrier is the most fun thing that you can possibly do, hands down, with your clothes on. And
Sometimes
yeah,
I mean, dude, if you're flexible enough, you can do just about anything.
Yes, you can. Yeah, but 204 has been awesome. You know, I mean, it is definitely my home. New Orleans is definitely a special place for me. I've been there the longest. I'm definitely going to miss it. But yeah, you know, it's time for me to go sit in the VFW and tell war stories.
Are you going to do any GA flying, general aviation? You going to try to get into that at all?
I don't think right away, at least. Maybe one day I will. You know, I think my commercial, you know, airline flying is going to keep me plenty busy.
That's true.
Yeah. So, but I think one day I'd love to fly, you know, an old, you know, Cub or something like that.
Awesome.
But
before I let you go, John wants to know what you're drinking, which I think you already answered, but what specific?
Yeah, this is a nice Glenlivet Scotch that was made in a rum barrel. So it's a Caribbean, you know, single malt Scotch.
Perfect. Hey, and where'd you get the River Rattler thing behind you, dude? That looks badass.
Oh, this thing here?
Yeah.
That thing? Yeah. I don't know. Somebody in the squadron had some, you know, some laser cutting tool, and he had it made for us. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's really fancy. Well, Farley, it's been a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for agreeing to chat with us tonight and tell your story. We will have you back on the channel, hopefully. Also, you know Gonki's got a channel.
Oh, yeah. I need to go say hi to Gonki.
It's called The Ready Room. He actually even calls it The Ready Room, and this is where we solve all of life's problems. So
perfect.
Check that out. And everybody follow Farley on Twitter one more time for the kids at home.
Yeah.
How do they follow you?
At Jack Stewart Book on Twitter. So no S, but it's at Jack Stewart Books on Instagram and Facebook. I just couldn't fit the S in the Twitter handle. So
yeah,
at Jack Stewart Book.
Well,
or you can go to jackstewartbooks.com and you can reach all the same place.
It's room for expansion, right? The first one's just for the book, and then the rest are for the books.
For the books. Books.
Awesome.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, dude, it's been a pleasure, my friend. You got anything, parting shots before we call it a night?
No, man. It's been great talking to you, Mover. Love the work that you do. Keep it up.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate
all right,
you, buddy.
And for the chat at home, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Good night, everybody. Thanks again. Excuse me. Oh, no. Oh! About a lot of them. Gosh. Usually fine with the doors off. All hot speed. Don't be a douche. That's rule number one. Make them tell you no.